From the moment Alena Rourke stepped through the tall glass doors of Straylight Industries, she felt like she had walked into another world, a world polished smooth, bright with daylight pouring from skylights, and far too clean to contain the type of trouble she carried in her chest. Her father's debt letter was folded inside her bag, edges softened from being clutched so many times. She had promised herself she wouldn't cry, not here, not now. But her hands trembled, her breathing shook, and every step toward the reception desk sounded like footsteps into a storm she was never meant to survive. She had come to offer herself, to work off what her late father owed, but she had no idea what kind of men awaited her at the very top floor. If you believe in kindness, hope, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Soul Moments Story. Your support means the world. Alena stood still for a moment to center herself. She wasn't used to places like this. She wasn't used to being noticed either. At 5 feet 11 inches, broad-shouldered, and sturdy in build, she was used to people labeling her before they listened to her. She had lived her life trying to shrink her presence, trying to walk gently in a world that seemed convinced she took up too much space. But today, she could not afford to shrink. Today, she had to step forward, even if her legs felt like sand beneath her. She reached the top floor after the longest elevator ride of her life. The space was bright with wide windows showing the city during a soft midday light, and everything felt too grand for someone like her. She walked to the office door with the CEO's name etched in silver, Kieran Vale. She was expecting an older businessman with a cold expression and sharp eyes, the kind who measured people's worth on a scale of money and usefulness. But when she entered, she saw a man about her age, perhaps early 30s, leaning over a desk covered in paperwork, the sunlight outlining the angles of his face. He looked up, and for a moment, confusion flickered across his features. Then something softer settled there. Curiosity, maybe. Or recognition of a pain he hadn't expected to see in a stranger. Alena, breath unsteady, introduced herself and placed the debt letter on his desk. She spoke quickly before she lost courage. Her father, Kieran Rourke, had borrowed heavily during the final months of his illness. The treatment he hoped would save his life never arrived in time. Now the responsibility had fallen onto her shoulders, and she had come prepared to beg. She had come prepared to offer work, any work. Cleaning, organizing, running errands, whatever he needed. She could repay it, she insisted. She would repay it. Kieran read the letter slowly. Too slowly. Alena's heart pounded with every passing second, imagining him calculating her worth. When he finally looked up, his expression wasn't cold, it was bewildered. He leaned back in his chair, sunlight glinting off his watch. Then, quietly but firmly, he told her that her father did not owe him anything. The debt had already been marked closed, the account wiped clean 2 months earlier. Alena froze, her mind stumbling over the words. That couldn't be right. She had spent nights awake planning how she would approach this moment. She had rehearsed apologies, bargains, sacrifices she would make for her father's honor. She had come expecting rejection or humiliation or even cruelty, but not kindness. Kindness was the one thing life had rarely shown her. Seeing the confusion tighten her expression, Kieran stood and walked to the window, speaking gently. He explained that he had known her father briefly years ago, back when he was a struggling intern. He described Kieran not as a man begging for money, but a man who once helped him during a difficult period. A man who gave advice with warmth. A man who pulled Kieran away from quitting his career entirely. When Kieran learned of Kieran's passing, he cleared the debt himself. Alena's throat tightened. She didn't understand. If the debt was gone, why had she gotten the notice? Why had her family been chased by collectors? Kieran's jaw set. It became clear someone else in the financial chain had continued to exploit the situation. He apologized, not as a CEO protecting his reputation, but as a person who truly regretted her suffering. But Alena couldn't absorb the words. Her mind kept returning to the image of her father apologizing to her on his hospital bed, whispering apologies he never owed her. She felt like she had failed him, even though the blame was never his to begin with. Kieran studied her silently for a long moment. Her heavy breathing, her trembling hands, the exhaustion woven into her body. She was a woman who had been carrying weight too big for her bones, and she didn't deserve another ounce of it. He finally stepped closer, his voice soft, steady. He said she didn't owe him anything, not money, not labor, not apologies. Then he added something she did not expect, spoken with a sincerity that disarmed her completely. "You owe me nothing, except maybe dinner. Dinner together. So I can tell you what your father meant to me." Alena blinked, unsure she heard correctly. She wasn't used to kindness dressed in such warmth. She wasn't used to someone looking at her like she wasn't a burden. Her cheeks flushed, her mind spinning. But his expression held no pressure, no hidden agenda. Just an invitation to breathe, to rest, to remember her father with someone who actually understood. Alena sat down slowly, feeling the weight inside her shift, loosen. She didn't accept immediately, not because she didn't want to, but because her emotions were too tangled to trust her voice. Kieran didn't rush her. He offered her water, asked if she was okay, listened when her quiet, "I don't understand why you're being so kind," slipped out. He simply replied that the world was harsh enough. Someone had to choose to be better. They talked until the light in the office shifted from bright midday to a softer afternoon hue. He told her stories of her father she had never heard, moments she had missed, kindnesses he had offered others quietly, strengths he carried even while suffering silently. Alena found herself crying, not from debt or fear, but from the ache of gratitude and the release of a grief she had been holding too close. Over the next weeks, everything changed, though nothing was planned. Kieran followed up with the finance department and ensured the predatory collectors were shut down. He called her to make sure she was all right, not in the overbearing way of a boss, but with the gentleness of someone who remembered her trembling hands and wanted her to never feel that helpless again. They had dinner, once, then twice. The dinners weren't romantic at first. They were soft, slow, filled with conversation about life, burdens, dreams she had buried long ago. They talked over warm daylight on restaurant terraces, each meeting easing something inside her she didn't know needed healing. He didn't look at her with pity. He saw her strength, real strength. The strength it took to walk into a corporate giant and offer herself out of love for a father who could no longer speak for himself. Alena found herself laughing again. She found herself sleeping without nightmares of debt collectors. She found herself wanting to live more boldly, no longer shrinking to make others comfortable. But life isn't a smooth road. Not all at once. Rumors began. Whispering employees claiming she was getting special treatment. People hinting she was trying to use her size or presence to intimidate others into favoritism. Comments about why someone like Kieran would spend time with someone like her. She had spent years learning to endure cruelty, but something about hearing it from strangers shook her resolve. She considered distancing herself, giving him excuses, pulling away quietly. She had been taught by life that good things weren't meant for her. That people would always judge before they understood. But Kieran noticed the shift. He invited her to the rooftop cafe of the building during a warm, clear afternoon. There, under the daylight that softened the tension in her shoulders, he told her he didn't care about office gossip. He didn't care what anyone said. What mattered was how she made him feel, steady, real, grounded. He said she reminded him of why he had started his journey. She reminded him of integrity, compassion, the quiet courage her father had once shown him. He told her he wanted her in his life not because she owed him anything, but because she brought something irreplaceable into his world. Alena cried then, but not out of fear. Out of relief. Out of joy she wasn't sure she was allowed to feel. The world didn't change overnight, but she did. She started pursuing the things she once set aside, her love for design, her dream of opening a community art studio. With Kieran's encouragement, she took classes. She created again. She came alive in ways she thought were lost forever. And as she healed, their bond deepened, slowly, respectfully, beautifully. It wasn't a whirlwind romance, it was a sunrise one. Gradual. Steady. Brightening the world one gentle moment at a time. By the time months passed, Alena found herself standing outside Straylight Industries again, this time not trembling, not burdened, not desperate. She walked inside with purpose, carrying a portfolio of her artwork, ready to present a collaborative charity project she and Kieran had planned to honor her father's memory. As she stepped into his office, sunlight again pouring over everything, she realized how far she had come from the girl who walked in with fear gripping her bones. She met Kieran's eyes, and he smiled, the kind of smile that told her she wasn't just someone he helped through a difficult moment. She was someone he chose to walk forward with. Their journey wasn't perfect, but it was real. Built on honesty. Built on kindness that expected nothing